I imagine you're wondering, what is this guy going to say about that? How could you possibly solve all the problems? Well, follow me on this a little bit because you will see it all makes sense when you see it from this perspective. So, first thing, think about all the people who you probably hear a lot of stories of people who were in very, very dramatic and horrible situations. They just went out of that situation, right? All our heroes. Well, for example, in American culture, they have all these models of people who were poor and become super rich, like Henry Ford, or a lot of people who were supposed to be close to poor, and they achieve a great status of outstanding persons for many different reasons. Let's say, for example, Charlie Chaplin comes to my mind. Well, I say this because you may think these people have something that I don't have, and that's why they were able to solve their situations. And here I am having a pretty much a normal life, and I have this problem. I don't know, whatever your problem could be. That could be a money problem. It could be a relationship problem. It could be many different kind of problems, even health problems. And at first, we try things and we get frustrated, and at some point, we sort of quit, and we just start believing that there's no solution for our problem. You talk with someone who has a problem for a long time, you will see how they develop certain ideas that they cannot make it through. So, what's happening? It's not that you're not smart enough. It's not that. We just get lost in something very simple that you understand very soon, which is our mind gets cutter, meaning that we're constantly losing our mental power into a trillion of ideas. Why is that important? Imagine that you have a bulb and the light power of that bulb is, 5 watts. When you are trying to reach out many, many things at the same time with that light, the amount of light in these different topics will be very, very minimal, right? Like you're all the time, your mind is jumping from one thing to another all the time. That means that you're using your brain resources in a very scattered way. So in that sense, the same power, saying that your intelligence may have a certain amount of power, gets lost into very little amounts through many different subjects. This subject, that's other subject, that's other subject, that's other subject. And that's how we lose our power. When you see, let's say, I was talking about this successful people role model, which is interesting, definitely. They basically just collected their purpose into something, and they made it that being prioritary, and the rest of things, they just devalue them, at least for their purposes, which is, I think, a very smart use of your brain. And when you see people around nowadays, they are always with a phone, so we cannot even stay a few minutes without losing our natural attention power to different things. We are overstimulated all the time. And what we don't know this is that we are losing our brain resources. For example, dopamine. When you're with your phone and you deplete yourself of dopamine, that prevents you from having the motivation to learn, motivation to grow. In this specific case that I'm mentioning, you won't have enough power to cut through whatever obstacles are you finding in your life. So the strategy goes like collecting all the resources of your mind and putting them together in one single focused thing. If you go through stories of successful people, you constantly find this situation where they will go for some time, they will retreat, they will go for, sometimes they will just be on their own home for a while, how interesting these geniuses stories where they just were disconnected from the world and were this thing. Well, they were just doing this. Some people say, I don't remember the name of the guy, but there's a guy who basically studied all the geniuses in history. And basically what the experts say is that everybody could be a genius. And when you say why you're not a genius, while we may not be outstanding enough to cut through the regular obstacles to our goals or to our solutions, we find that the same problem is happening for all of us. That's why it's so important to be mentioned. This may sound a little abstract, but if you get it, you understand why I'm saying that all the problems can be solved. Because then you understand that you have to prioritize. For example, if someone has a business, that your life is sort of a business, the manager will have a bunch of problems. You first need to focus on solving one, first understanding what should be your priority, the most important, urgent one. And then little by little, you start cracking the whole thing. At some point, you can turn around. Basically, every success story, if you think about it, is happening like that. So what does it have to do with you? Well, what I'm suggesting you to do is to learn to collect your attention, your brain power, into one subject at a time. In Zen, they have this beautiful way of expressing enlightenment in the day-to-day. Like you do one thing at a time. So if you're doing the dishes, you're not doing the dishes and thinking about your problems. If you're thinking about your problems, you're thinking about your problems and you're not doing something else. And that's how you collect all the power in your brain and clarity comes. So your attention becomes some sort of like a laser. It doesn't matter. Many people, as I said before, speculate that we all have some sort of like the same power, although we don't think like that. But there are a lot of serious pointers that say that, yeah, most people may have enough. Let's call it. It's not IQ. IQ is just one reference. There's a lot of different kinds of intelligences or concepts of what intelligence is. So important thing is not to put yourself a label. Just consider this idea that you have enough energy to cut through all whatever problems you have in your life. The important thing is that you learn to focus your mind one thing at a time. And in that way, you multiply your power. If you have this 5 watts lamp that I was saying before, and you scatter it into 100 subjects, you have, I didn't do the math for this, 0.00, well, I don't know, but you have like, sorry, my maths, improvised math, not working. So you have 100 times less the power that you would have if you would just focus on one single thing. Do you see how simple that is? And you may think you're doing this, but I would say you're probably not. Actually, I'm pretty sure you're not. And I'm saying this in a social media and in a video, so feel free to contact me and write me on the comments and say if you're trying it and it's not working, and we can go together and go through why it's not working. But this works for every human. It's going to work for you too. So understanding that the real problem underlying all our problems is a scattered mind. It's a constantly distracted attention that disempower our capacity, our intelligence to go with clarity through a subject and realistically understand what you can do about it or you can't. And in that way, definitely, even when you're in a situation that you will have to say, okay, I have to stand in this position. Imagine it's a job you don't want and you're in for maybe a couple of years more. You say, okay, yeah, I cannot quit now. I need to still to pay my credit card or whatever reason. Well, okay, fine. But once you make that statement, then you can start looking for a different kind of solutions. For example, like, what is your actual problem in your job? It has to do with your boss. It has to do with the tasks you're doing, with a specific person, a colleague. So suddenly, this super intelligence power, if you're really honestly going through it, by honesty, it means like you're not scattered into a lot of blah, 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 blah. Honesty means one piece. And if you go in that way through every problem you have, one by one at a time, the heat of your light, of your awareness, of your attention is going to little by little penetrate. Like if you put together the same power that is in a bulb, you collect it into just one beam, you have a laser, and the laser can cut through close to anything. Just a concept of how to reduce scatter attention into collected attention. So you could do it in many different ways. definitely relaxation is going to be a big part of it. If most of the time people cannot even relax, your body is very tense and you're emotionally drained and your everything, it is completely out of balance in your life, then I would strongly suggest at first relaxation, which is already letting go of all these unconscious pulls. And then little by little, you start gaining some momentum of, okay, now I feel relaxed. I don't know, probably go to YouTube and look for relaxations or meditation, definitely. But anything that makes you feel like you chill, you relax, you let go a little bit of this background consuming activity in our minds. And then when you release a bit of attention, then you can start little by little start learning to focus it on topics. Maybe don't start if the topic is triggering a lot of emotional reaction in you. I strongly suggest you to first train to collect your attention in something simple, in your breath, in what you're seeing, maybe the colors of the screen changing, or the sounds, including the sounds of this video. Just letting your attention rest into that. And the more you do that, the more it collects and becomes more powerful. So suddenly, you will look at the problem and the solution will be evident. I know this sounds simple, but I hope you give it a try and let me know how it goes.